Hello, welcome to today's video. Today we're talking all about the science of sugars, and before I even tell you anything about this, I'm going to tell you why you should care. So there goes Joanna, my technical wizard. So I'm going to tell you why you should care. So you might have already heard of the specific carbohydrate diet and the GAPS diet. These are based on this concept. So if you've heard about them, if you want more information about them, this is going to be a very good video for you because it's going to help you understand the basic scientific logic of why these diets work. The basic premise of this is we've got big molecules called starch. So let's just imagine this is what a starch molecule looks like. So we've got this big chain here, and it's got small little, I wonder if I can do little circles. This would be really cool. It's got small little, so they're like this. So we've got little molecules of glucose that are attached in this big chain of this molecule. So this is just a small representation. Really, starch is like thousands of times bigger than this. It can have like tens of thousands of sugars connected in one big chain. And interestingly, this is why starch doesn't taste sweet, because when it's bound like this in this form, we don't have receptors that make it taste sweet. But when we start breaking these things down, so for example, these red molecules here, these are all glucose molecules. So if we've got it in this starch molecule like this, it doesn't taste sweet. This is like when you eat bread or rice or any kind of starchy vegetable. But you can see this is all made of sugar. So if over here we've got a little demonstration of this is what glucose looks like, this tastes sweet. If you were to eat this would be like eating dextrose powder. It would taste sweet to you. So even though you can't taste the sweetness in the starch, it's still full of sugars. So the logic behind these diets is when we have a damaged gut, we lose the ability to break these more complicated foods. So we've got a really good example here. This is a starch molecule. Let me try and highlight the whole thing. So this is a starch molecule. Very good, eh? I'm doing great presentation. So this is a starch molecule. So the first thing that needs to happen in this process is we have one enzyme that begins to work on this called amylase. And what amylase does is it comes and it cuts this big starch molecule like this. It cuts it along these parts here. So then we end up being left with two sugars bound together, just as two sugars. So after that, we've got, it's like this. So we've got one here, and we've got, and we've got another one bound to it like this. So now we've got two sugar molecules. So in order for us to fully digest these things, they have to be broken down into this. They have to be a single sugar. We can't absorb any sugars unless they're broken down to the smallest form, the smallest single sugar. So this molecule up here we've got is called starch. These molecules here, these are disaccharides. So disaccharide, if you break that word down, you've got di and saccharide. So di means two, and saccharide means sugar. So it means two sugar. And that's what you've got here. These are two sugar molecules. So to go from this into just being two sugars that are not attached, so being two molecules of glucose, we need another enzyme. And this enzyme comes along and it cuts them like this, here, and it cuts it here. And this enzyme is called maltase. So this molecule now is called maltose. And this enzyme here is called maltase. So this is what breaks it down. So understanding what we're trying to do in the GAPS and SCD diets is very well demonstrated by this visualization here, because at this first stage, we've got this enzyme amylase that's required. Well, if you've got a deficiency of enzymes in your body, so this brings us on to another really interesting concept called enzyme capacity. So you can imagine this as your body has the ability to produce a certain amount of enzymes every single day. And this varies somewhat depending on your current level of health. But there's like a set amount that your body can produce. So it has to be very, very picky. It has to be very careful about the enzymes that it wants to produce, because different enzymes do different jobs. So it has to prioritize ones that are most important. So if you've got toxicity or other kinds of like high priority jobs, then your body is going to prioritize making enzymes to help you with detoxification, with maybe like breaking down fat cells, or whatever the process is that the body is prioritizing. And consequently, it isn't able to produce enough of this enzyme, which means the beginning of this process doesn't start to happen. So you've got this big chain of sugars that hasn't been able to be broken down into these disaccharide sugars. So that's really bad, first of all, because even if this big sugar is exposed to these other enzymes, these maltase enzymes, they can't work. They only work when the molecules are like this. They only work when the molecules have been broken down to the point where they're like this. So if it doesn't get to this point, it doesn't matter how much maltase you have, it's not going to do anything. So this is where a digestive enzyme would come in handy. This could really help. Using a digestive enzyme that contains amylase will do this first job for you. But this second job, this is really where the GAPS and SCD diet, I don't really like calling it SCD diet because it's specific carbohydrate diet. So if you call it the SCD diet, it's the specific carbohydrate diet. So you call it the specific carbohydrate diet. So this is where this gets really interesting, because this first enzyme that we've got happening up here, amylase, is produced, first of all, in our saliva when we chew. So this is why as you begin to chew starches, rice, pasta, bread, they begin to start tasting slightly more sweet. I don't know if you've ever noticed that. Next time you're eating some starch, keep chewing it, keep chewing it, keep chewing it. Don't swallow it. And you'll notice that it begins to start tasting sweet. And that's because the amylase that's being produced in your mouth is beginning to break this down into these disaccharide sugars here. But the majority of the amylase that we produce is produced from our pancreas, which is lower down in the digestive system. This is after the stomach. So if you are having an effective deficiency of this enzyme, so your body is prioritizing other enzymes and it isn't able to produce enough of this to facilitate this starch breakdown into disaccharide sugars, then these sugars are undigestible. We can't break them down. So they're basically going to ferment, and whatever organisms you have in the gut, and especially if you're interested in like the specific carbohydrate diet or the GAPS diet, there's a good likelihood you've got some sort of pathogenic organisms present in the digestive system. So now you're basically providing them rocket fuel, because we know, I'm sure you know, if you have sugar, it gives you like a lot of energy really fast. So the same is true in your gut. If you provide these organisms with these molecules of starch, you've got to remember, starch is sugar, and they have enzymes that they can use to break these things down very quickly. So it's like providing rocket fuel to whatever's growing in your gut. This is not necessarily a bad thing. This is why healthy people can, even if they're a little bit poorly, they can eat it. Maybe they don't digest it properly, but they don't have any problems. But if you've been chronically ill and you've chronically not been able to digest carbohydrates for an extended period of time, you've more than likely got some kind of organism that's there that's eating these things. So this could be why you eat starch and then get really bloated and gassy and have a lot of abdominal pain and digestive discomforts, because you're not breaking these down properly. Maybe you're not producing enough amylase. But this is the really sinister part, because even if you are producing enough amylase, we still can't digest this at this stage. It needs to be broken down into this single sugar here. It needs to be completely broken down. So we need maltase to break this down. The thing about maltase is it's not an enzyme that we produce from our pancreas. It's something that's called a brush border enzyme. So let me just see if I can figure out how to get a little pen so I can draw you another little diagram. Cool. So we've got inside our gut, we've got these little finger-like protrusions like this called microvilli. If you've ever seen an Activia advert or a Yakult advert, you've seen there's like these like wiggly little fingers inside your digestive tract. So I've got a little diagram of them here. So maltase, being a brush border enzyme, this means it's produced on your brush border. So it's produced on the edges of heat. So these little squares represent maltase. So you can see you've got maltase present on the border of this gut. And this is the really interesting part about GAPS and SCD is the primary premise in these diets is that the gut has been damaged to such an extent where the gut, instead of looking like this here, where it's healthy and it's got all of these brush border enzymes all over it, it looks more like this. I don't know how far down I can draw. I think I can go down here. Yeah. Okay, so it looks more like this. So it's red, it's inflamed. The peaks aren't very high. It's very, there's way less surface area and it's really damaged like this. And instead of having this many brush border enzymes, so instead of having this much maltase present, maybe you've only got like one here, and this is a little bit of a healthy villi, so maybe you've got 2 on here. And you can see like the amount of this enzyme that's present is way less. So even if this stage up here has occurred properly, the gut is damaged. So you're not able to complete this second stage here. If I can figure out how to put text. Can I put text here? Sorry, I'm a bit of a tech noob. Oh, yeah, it worked. Cool. So we've got 1 there. We've got 2 here. So this is the first step. This is the second step. So this step has to occur first. Otherwise, this doesn't even matter. But even if this works completely, we still can't digest or absorb anything until this stage. So the reason that this is such a vicious cycle is when these potentially pathogenic organisms that are currently inhabiting the gut are then fed with these sugars that you're not digesting properly, they produce a lot of toxins and harmful substances to the gut, which is what is causing this damage in the first place. So you get stuck in this really vicious cycle. And that's why the lady that made the specific carbohydrate diet book, she called it Breaking the Vicious Cycle. This is the vicious cycle that's occurring. You've got sugars that aren't being fully digested properly. So consequently, they're feeding pathogenic organisms, which create damage to the small intestinal lining, which prevent you from then, as a further step, they prevent you from being able to digest sugars in the future. So you're stuck in this vicious loop. And this is what the book is about. It's about breaking this vicious cycle. So how do we go about this? So we've got 2 examples of sugars up here. We've got the starch molecule and we've got this maltose molecule. But these aren't the only forms of sugar that you can have in your diet. Jonah, how do I make a new page? Sorry, I need to get a new page. Got a lot of stuff to talk about. Say hello. Say hola.
Hola.
Okay.
You
may as well save it. Yeah, it'll be a good picture for later. Thank you. Cool. So next page. So we've got different types of sugars. So you've just seen what a starch molecule looks like, but we've got different types of disaccharide and monosaccharide sugars. So I'm going to try and use different colors to represent different sugar molecules here. So we've already used this one as glucose. So we're going to use this as glucose. Then we'll use, let's say we've got, no, I want to stay red. Okay. Then we'll come over here and we'll use this one as, let's say this one is galactose. And what's a fruity color? Let's go with, orange might be, let's go with green. So green is going to be fructose. Glucose. Let me just see if I've got all the ones we need. Glucose. Yeah, these are the most important ones. So let me just write you a little description so you can see what they are. So we've got glucose. We've got lactose. And we've got fructose. There are like hundreds more sugars, but these are the most important ones for us to look at because these are the most common in the diet. So we've got, these are the monosaccharides. So when you've broken sugars down to this point, so they're in their individual, so you've got like 1 glucose molecule, you've got 1 galactose molecule, you've got 1 fructose molecule. Now they're able to be absorbed. There's so we were talking about the digestive system. This villi, this surface that you've got in your small intestine is now able to uptake these nutrients and absorb them. So these are like the base monosugars, but it's very common to find these either in big structures of starch or in disaccharide sugars, because these aren't very common in nature. I mean, they're not uncommon, but it's more common to find these other forms. So first, let's take a look at sucrose. So this is a very common one. So you've got a glucose molecule like this, and you've got a fructose molecule like this. And they're bound together like this. So this, let me just write down what this one is for you. So this is sucrose. Let's do it in black. Sucrose. No, didn't work. Let me do that again. I'm learning as I'm going. I'm teaching and learning at the same time. Teaching science and biochemistry, learning how to use a laptop. So we've got sucrose here, sucrose sugar. So let's just leave that there. So we've got sucrose, and this is very common in. So if you think sugar that you buy in the supermarket, like like the granulated white refined table sugar, this is sucrose. So sucrose is glucose bound to fructose, and the enzyme that we need to break this apart here. There's a really cool pattern, and this is something that I want you to take away from this lesson today. Is for the most part, you can figure out what the enzyme is that breaks the sugar down just by looking at the name of the sugar and then sort of changing the O's at the end to A's. So O's is usually the suffix of a sugar. So you see you've got glucose, you've got galactose, and you've got fructose. This usually means sugar. And we can take the prefix that we've got at the beginning and change the suffix that we have. Is it the suffix? The part at the end, we can change it to A's, and it tells you what the name of the enzyme is that breaks this down. So if you've got sucrose down here, we can figure. Yes, good input from Joanna. She tells us the enzyme that will break this down is called sucrase. Oh, it's in yellow. Let me change that to black so you can actually see it. Break them. Come on, change to black. It's still in yellow. Technical difficulties. Let me just delete this. Let's get rid of that. Oh god, this must be absolutely horrible for everybody watching that knows how to use paint. Let's just start again. So I'll use a different text box in black. Put it down here. Enzyme sucrase. So sucrase is a brush border enzyme. So again, it's present on this lining of the small intestine. So if your gut's damaged, you're going to lose the ability to digest sucrose. So this is like table sugar. So in those white bags of sugar. This is also the primary sugar that's in beetroot and sugar cane, for example. This is where we refine sucrose from. So we make table sugar out of beetroots and sugar cane, and that's because it's very high in sucrose. But this is also quite high in fruits that aren't ripe. So sucrose is or even starch as well. There's lots of starch. So a really good example we can think of here is think of a banana. So a banana, when it's really not ripe, you taste it. You can feel like the starch on your teeth, and it doesn't taste sweet at all. And it's really tough. It's really there's a lot of it's almost more like a potato than like a fruit, right? It's very starchy. But as this fruit begins to ripen, the fruit actually produces enzymes itself. So it sort of begins to digest itself. So it starts breaking down this sucrose into the glucose and the fructose. It starts breaking down the starch into more glucose. And that's why as the banana ripens, it tastes more sweet because it's basically digesting itself. So that's one premise of these sorts of diets is if you are eating fruit, you want to eat it as ripe as possible because it's going to have enabled the fruit to digest itself as much as you can. So that's a very interesting sugar. Next, let's move on to lactose. So lactose is made of, I can't remember which one did I use. I think I used indigo. What was it? Let's just figure out which one I used. Pretty sure it was indigo. So lactose is a galactose molecule bound with a glucose molecule. Okay, so it changed color. That's fine. We need that color anyway. We'll go back to this one. So it's a glucose molecule bound with a galactose molecule. So this is lactose. You've probably heard of lactose. Lactose intolerance, very common now. Why is lactose intolerance so common? Okay, that changed to black. That was not supposed to change to black. Red, so that's supposed to be this color. This should be an undo button, I believe. Yeah, cool. Okay, that just deleted it. Right, let's start again. Oh, this is fun. I'm enjoying myself. I hope you're enjoying yourself too. Remember, as I said, Q&A. I've got your thing up. You can leave me questions if you have anything to say, any questions to ask. So let's unselect that. Go into the type in texting. Okay, now we come down here. So this is lactose. This is a lactose molecule. So, golden star to anybody that can tell me what enzyme we need to break this down. So over here we've got sucrose. The enzyme that breaks this down is sucrase. Any guesses? Lactose. The enzyme that we use to break it down is lactase. Yes, you probably got that right. So good job, you. So we need lactase to break this enzyme down. So let's just add this little enzyme here. So this enzyme goes like this, cuts it in half, and now it's digestible. It's a glucose molecule and a galactose molecule. So how do we produce lactase as an enzyme? So lactase isn't actually a brush border enzyme for the most part. Most disaccharide breaking down enzymes are produced on the brush border in our gut. But this especially with people from so you can imagine the Earth, people who are born more equatorially, so more around the equator, they actually have less ability to produce this enzyme. And this is because the people that lived like in the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere, they weren't able to survive so much based on the foliage and the vegetables and the stuff that was ripe year round because it was a lot hotter. So they had to depend on like animal milk and animal products a lot more. So you've got like the shepherds in like the Netherlands and in England and so on and so forth. So they have more of an ability to be able to produce this lactase enzyme on their brush border. But for the most part, lactase is actually produced by our beneficial bacteria. So if you've got a deficiency of the probiotic organisms that produce lactase, you're going to have lactose intolerance. You're not going to be able to break it down and digest it properly because you don't have this enzyme present because these bacteria that produce it aren't there. So the best way that we can work to actually fix this isn't directly by focusing on healing the gut lining. It's more about restoring the appropriate microbiome into the gut. So this is really like your lactobacillus and your bifidobacterium strains. And you know this because these are the organisms that are present in yogurt. So obviously the ones that are in yogurt are the organisms that like to eat lactose because yogurt is made from milk, which is full of lactose. And then they break all of those sugars down. So this is one reason why you might be intolerant to liquid dairy, but you can eat yogurt fine. And this is because, first of all, when you eat this yogurt, you're providing all of these beneficial organisms that you need to heal the gut lining and to produce this lactase enzyme. So you're able to actually break this down, any of the bits of lactose that are left. But also on top of this, you're going to have way less lactose present in the yogurt because these organisms have already been breaking this down and digesting it before you even put it into your body. So one huge part of both the GAPS and the specific carbohydrate diet is making your own homemade yogurt. And this is because if you allow this to ferment for a long enough period of time, so they do like 24 to 48 hours, the organisms that are present in this actually break down all of the lactose. So it's basically lactose free. So even if you're lactose intolerant, if you make your own yogurt at home, there's a really good likelihood you're going to have no symptoms of lactose intolerance because there's no lactose present because they've already broken it down and digested it. And they've already broken it down and digested it into glucose and galactose, which means these sugars are now bioavailable and absorbable to you, which means it's not going to feed pathogenic organisms in your gut. It's a simple sugar that's ready to be absorbed. And that pretty much wraps up lactose. So these are the most important sugars that you need to know. So obviously there's the one that we already, we've just drawn a line. Let me just undo that. So obviously there's the one that we already spoke about, which was maltose. So this is, you don't really find maltose present by itself. It's usually a byproduct, a later stage of starch digestion. So let's just get the enzyme. So the enzyme that breaks this here, like this. This enzyme that breaks this down, does anybody remember? If you shout it out, even if I can't hear you, just shout it out wherever you are. So we've got maltose here. Tell me what the enzyme is. Shout it out. Leave it as a comment. Oh, it's in yellow. That should not be in yellow. No, it's not typing. Okay. Let me know what the enzyme is called. So it's maltose. Maltose is the sugar. So what's the enzyme? You're correct. It is maltase. Maltase. But as you can see, really not complicated. You just have to learn how to follow the pattern. Yeah, we got Kerry Finnegan. She says Maltese. Exactly. It's with an A, not a U. It's Maltese. But absolutely, you got it right. So good job. Nice one. So now you can understand this is like the basic biochemistry of carbohydrate digestion. So I think you can see now it's not that complicated. Like I can teach this to like a kid. It's really not that hard fundamentally to understand. It's how do we put this into application in our lives? So there's a few premises that you can use that will really help you understand this. And it's, first of all, food combining. So if you haven't done any research or you don't know anything about food combining, do some research on that. I have an ebook that I made all about food combining. If you would like me to send you a copy of that, it's free. Please just let me know and I'll send you a copy. Also, even if you don't plan on doing the GAPS or specific carbohydrate diets, I would still read the books because they are full of so much information and they really help to facilitate a huge perspective shift in my understanding of how the gut functions and how we heal from chronic, especially these incurable gut problems like Crohn's, diverticulitis, IBS. Like my gut is so good now, and I used a lot of this understanding to help me heal. And even now, moving forward, knowing this information is still really good because we all get sick, we all get poorly sometimes, and understanding how you can help your body digest the food that you're eating better is only going to be a good thing. Cell says, if you don't have lactobacillus bacteria, how can you help the growth? So first of all, yogurt is a really good way to do it. Yogurt, anything that's got these organisms in, any fermented food that's got these things in naturally is going to be a really good idea. I find though that to get lacto and bifido up, you really kind of need a high strength therapeutic probiotic. And we're talking like kind of quite high strength, like 100 billion up to 1 trillion CFUs to actually have a therapeutic dose. Because you've got to think like the number of organisms in your gut isn't even in the trillions. It's up in like the quadrillions, the quintillions. It's unfathomably large amounts of organisms. And if you're just putting this tiny little probiotic in, it's kind of like you've got this roaring fire and you flick a drop of water at it. It's like it just evaporates before it does anything. So high strength is really quite important. You'll know if you're having a high enough strength because you will feel the interaction between your current microflora and the probiotics that you're taking in. So if you're using a good probiotic, I really like custom probiotics. It's only going to have strains that are beneficial. Like there's no pathogenesis of these organisms. So if you take a probiotic that's only beneficial and you get negative symptoms from it, it tells you that it's not the probiotic itself that's making you feel bad. It's the interaction between the probiotic, which is health-giving and beneficial, and the organisms that are present currently in your gut, which are the organisms that are actually making you sick. So it's very common, if you're taking a good probiotic that's making the difference for you, it's very common to see an increase in all of the negative symptoms that you're already trying to resolve. So that doesn't mean that the probiotic is a bad thing. It's actually quite the opposite. So let me just figure out how I can put this back on my face, because we're done with the demonstrations for today. So it goes like this, like this. You should see me now. Cool. So yeah, you want to make sure that having a negative reaction to taking a probiotic is actually a good sign, because if you have symptoms, so I'll use myself as an example because I know myself very well, and I'm very open, okay about sharing what's happening with me. So if sharing my screen, no, okay. So if I would take a probiotic, it would exacerbate the symptoms that I was already experiencing. So I would get increases in arthritis in my joints. I would get feelings of like depression and suicidality. I would get increased gastritis pain. I would get increased constipation. And this was all a sign that the probiotic that I was taking was interacting with the organisms that were already present in my gut that were already causing these symptoms. And acutely, it made them worse. But the reason it made them worse is the ones that are already living in your gut, like they like to live there. They're quite happy being where they are. They've got all the food that they could ask for. They're in a nice, warm, moist environment. Like your gut is prime real estate. It's like the best place to live on planet Earth. So the organisms that are living there, they don't want to go anywhere. So when you take a probiotic, your body is going to work with the probiotic to try to move anything that isn't supposed to be there out. And they don't want to go. So they're going to fight. So they're like throwing hand grenades, and they're creating inflammation, and they're releasing histamine, and they're doing everything they can to just kick up as much of a fuss as possible so that you stop doing whatever you're doing. And they want you to stop trying to kick them out. That's why they react like this. So you'll know if you're taking a good probiotic and it's making the difference for you, because in the short term, it makes your symptoms a lot worse. And you just need to take as much of a dose as you're able to tolerate without making your symptoms too unbearable, but be realistic. Like don't make it to the point where your life is completely unbearable, but go as fast as you can. So I call this the Goldilocks zone. And this is one of the things that really takes a lot of work when I'm working with clients, is helping them figure out where the Goldilocks zone is, because the Goldilocks zone changes as your gut flora begins to shift and you begin to start feeling like less symptoms from taking the probiotic. You're able to tolerate more. The microbiome is beginning to make a positive shift. So you're beginning to actually move towards health. And when you take the probiotic, for example, it doesn't have as many like bad guys to fight. So the symptoms that you get as a consequence aren't so bad. So you can take more and you can end up tolerating more without as much of a negative symptom. So you have to consider all of these things. One of the most important points is your tolerance of these probiotics is very much limited by your body's ability to detoxify, because all of these things that are being produced in the gut, these toxic compounds, histamine, whatever it is, if your body is healthy enough and your body is supported enough, and so you've built like a detox protocol around everything that you're doing, you're providing your body with all of the nutrients that it needs. So if you've got enzyme mutation pathways like MTHFR, you're providing extra methylfolate so your body can keep on top of these things. If you've done something and it's depleted your molybdenum, then you provide enough molybdenum to your body, then it can keep going. Like, symptoms only appear when we push too fast, or when the body isn't resourced enough to be able to keep up with what we're asking it to do. So the two steps here are: one, either slow down so that you can keep it within tolerance of what your body's able to handle, or two, make sure that you're providing this additional support. So a really good example for me would be when I was having these kind of flare-ups and I would get this arthritis. As soon as I would go and do a coffee enema, the arthritis pain would come down like massively. It would come down from like a 7 or an 8 out of 10, and I'd really have it in my wrists and my ankles. And if you've ever had arthritis before, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But like the thought of putting my hand inside a cup and like washing it like this, like it felt like there was broken glass inside my wrist, and it was incredibly painful. And when I would walk around, I couldn't. So I'd walk around and I wouldn't bend my ankles. So I'd be like hobbling around, like almost like waddling like a penguin. And I could do a coffee enema, and this would provide my body with extra capacity to handle all of these toxins that have been produced in this die-off reaction. And like my anxiety would come down, my depression would come down, the inflammation in my body, so the pain and stuff that I was experiencing would come down. And this is the art of finding the Goldilocks zone. Is you need to move these organisms out to be healthy, and you need to do it as quickly as possible, because like your life's valuable, right? You don't want to spend as much. You want to spend as little time sick as possible. You want to heal as quickly as you can. But going past the Goldilocks zone actually slows your progress down. So finding that sweet spot where you're taking as many probiotics as possible to begin to shift this bacterial dysbiosis in the direction of health, while simultaneously providing the body with everything that it needs to deal with the fallout, the damage that happens in this like warfare that's occurring, and like keeping you sane as well. Like when you take a probiotic or you take anything and it makes you feel worse, it's really hard to get over that like cognitive thought that you have, like, I take that and I feel really crap. It's like you kind of have an instinct to not take it anymore. So understanding that if you can stay in the Goldilocks zone and you feel a little bit crap, but not so crap that you just discontinue what you're doing, is really important, because it keeps your healing momentum. And this healing is really about this. It's about momentum. It's about doing the little things that slowly add up. It's about getting that. Imagine it like you're on top of a mountain and you've got this little snowball, and like maybe you're really sick and there's not much you can do. It's about getting this little tiny pea-sized snowball and just pushing it down the mountain. And every time you push it a little bit more, A little bit more snow sticks to it, and a little bit more, and a little bit more. And eventually, you keep pushing this, and it'll have built up to such a size that you push it one last time, and it just rolls, and it just creates this massive snowball of healing. And this is the concept of snowballing. So this is a very common concept in video games. It's like where you get your character strong enough that you're just able to mop everything up. Like your healing is going in such a positive direction. Everything that's happening is just contributing more to the size of this healing ball that you've created. And as it gets bigger, it gets faster, it picks up more snow, and it's just this huge positive cascade. You've pushed the momentum from sickness to health. So that was quite a long answer to quite a simple question, but it does require a lot of nuance in the approach. So yeah, you'll know if a probiotic that you're taking is working for you because you probably feel pretty crap, and that's a good thing. And you just need to keep it within your tolerable limit. So final takeaways from today. First of all, if you're on a low FODMAP diet, if you know that you don't digest certain types of FODMAP fibers very well, you probably don't digest starch very well either. So if you're doing a low FODMAP diet, there's a good likelihood you might want to be doing a low starch diet as well. So I would look into something like the GAPS or the specific carbohydrate diet. I prefer GAPS. It's sort of like the next generation of specific carbohydrate diet. It's like the evolution. So I would go there. There's 2 books. Either of them are really good. If you've got more mental health problems, so like autism, schizophrenia, bipolar, go for the first one, the yellow one. If you've got more physiological problems, so Crohn's disease, chronic fatigue syndrome, adrenal fatigue, more physiological sort of issues, I'd go with the second book, the blue one. Side note, I do have a workshop coming up this Sunday. So today is Thursday morning. We've got this live workshop on Sunday. So in just a couple of days, it's going to be kind of like this, but you're actually going to be in the room with me. So instead of having to type your questions to me, you can actually just put your hand up and I'll say, yeah, what's up? And you can give me your questions and I can help you figure this out. So we're building this workshop in a 3-step process of reversing adrenal fatigue. So first step is identifying and understanding root causes. Second step is what we can do to help resolve these root cause issues. And the third step is what we can do to provide the body with support in the meantime. So the example that I like to use is, imagine you've got a kitchen that's flooded. The tap is on. It's flooding everywhere. It's like the first step is figure out why the tap is stuck on. That's the root cause. And the second step is turn the tap off. So we turn the tap off and that's it. So now there's no extra water getting flooded everywhere. However, we've now got this issue where there's water all over the floor and there's water flowing out of the sink. And it's like, the body will get on top of this stuff eventually, but there's a lot that we can do to help sort of like mop up the damage. So there's a lot we can do to support it. And this is step 3. So we're going through these 3 steps in this order. And it's a one-to-many live workshop. So you're literally there, pen and paper, writing your questions down, put your hand up, give me your questions so I can really help you recover from adrenal fatigue, because I've done it, so you can do it. And it's just about knowing what the root cause is and resolving it and supporting your body in the meantime. So finishing up, George says, Gut and Psychology Syndrome by Dr. Natasha Campbell-McBride saved my life. Yes, so that's exactly what we're talking about. Brilliant book. It's one of the books that I would recommend every single person on earth reads. It's like, even if you don't have a gut problem, even if you don't have any of the issues that I'm talking about, it's still information you need to know. You're in a human body. You need to know how to be a mechanic to your body. And that book has a lot of information about how to do that. So I strongly recommend everybody check that out. So that's everything for today. If you have any questions, leave me them as a comment below. If you're interested in the workshop that I just mentioned, it is free. I'm not selling you anything. It's a free workshop. It's first come, first serve, 25 seats. So leave me a comment below and I'll get back to you. Or if you definitely want to make sure you save your seat, just send me a DM. It's really easy. Just send me a DM, whatever platform you see this, just send me a DM. So that's everything for today. Hope you found it helpful. Any questions, let me know. Reach out if you need any help with anything, and I'll see you soon. Thanks for coming. Hope you found it helpful. Bye-bye. So let me figure out how to end this broadcast. Okay, end broadcast. Yeah.